Coming up on Network Africa, U.S. President Barack Obama gives serious warning to African leaders who hold on to power after expiration of their tenure. Desmond Tutu, 83-year-old renowned Archbishop of the town, returns to the hospital 1 week after being discharged. West African leaders meet in Cameroon to strengthen border ties. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I am Anne Nwawodo, standing in for Cynthia Are. And we start off with this one. As America can no longer accept sit-in tight leaders in Africa, that's coming from U.S. President Barack Obama. The president spoke at the end of his visit to Africa. He says nobody should be president for life. This was at the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia, and President Obama did not mince words.
You may have democracy in name, but not in substance. And I'm convinced that nations cannot realize the full promise of independence until they fully protect the rights of their people. When a leader tries to change the rules in the middle of the game just to stay in office, it risks instability and strife, as we've seen in Burundi. And this is often just a first step down a perilous path. And sometimes you'll hear a leader say, well, I'm the only person who can hold this nation together. If that's true, then that leader has failed to truly build their nation.
Well, on that note, we're now being joined by Ebun Adegboruwa. He's a legal practitioner, and he's going to be talking to us about this matter. Welcome, Mr. Adegboruwa.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I mean, there's a tendency for African leaders to remain in power even after their tenure ends. What do you think is the reason for this?
I think when you look through the continent of Africa generally, you must examine the process by which people rise to power. It's in most cases through armed conflict. You look at the example of Burundi presently. If you look at the history of Nkurunziza alone, he joined the Hutu forces in 1995 and rose to become his leader in 2001, and then through that the parliament brought him to power. You look at Mugabe, under the guise of trying to get rid of the white domination in his country. He's been there, and now at the age of 91, he's been ruling his country 33 years.
Exactly.
Look at Paul Biya in Cameroon. They have no other leader than Paul Biya for the past 40-something years. So it's through the system that they emerge. They have gone through rebellion, through armed conflict. So when they get to power, nobody could challenge them. Yeah, and they can stay there for as long as they want.
Because I was going to say, I mean, Libya, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Burundi, all these countries, all leaders of these countries are guilty of this. Now, when you look at the tenures, throughout their tenure, they didn't do so much talking about economy, political harmony. Why is this that way?
A person who climbed to power through armed conflict, through war, through force of arms and gun is not accountable to anybody. He was not elected into office, and even if he eventually organized an election, it's an election that is organized through intimidation, through coercion. So when they get to power in that force, they are not accountable to anybody because they can always manipulate the votes. They can always get their way to be re-elected. I mean, you can be sure that until Paul Biya dies, he will continue to remain the president of Cameroon. So in that way, he doesn't feel like providing any services to his people. He doesn't feel like being accountable. The people become poorer because the opposition has been silenced. So in such cases, really, it is a burden on the Western countries who are the ones funding these armed conflicts because of their interest economically. In most of the cases, Sudan, in Malawi, virtually in Angola, all African countries where there is conflict, a country in the West is always supporting the armed rebellion for the purpose of the economic interests of their own countries.
Well, this has been tagged tagged by President Barack Obama. Now, can this be stopped?
Oh, surely it is for the Western countries who are sponsoring these rebellions to ensure that there is a system that is transparent enough to produce a leadership. And then to insist that when you climb to power through force, through the gun, and there's a specific time for you to organize election, you do not organize it transparently or you manipulate it, as Nkurunziza has done now, then they will cease relations because no country can exist as an island. So the Western countries have their own blame in the emergence of the dictatorship in Africa, because over times they find out that in most cases the imperialists, the multinational companies are the ones supporting and patronizing this leadership for them to exist. Because without support from the West, no dictator can exist in Africa.
Do you think this is possible to happen in Nigeria? I mean, we see people ruling for 10 years, 20 years. Is it possible here in Nigeria?
I think the first thing in Nigeria is to, first of all, conclude that we are done with the military. People have paid their lives with it. People have died. At least we have crossed over to say the only way we can get to leadership in this country now is through the ballot. It's to make that ballot more transparent. Jonathan did it, even though imperfectly, but he did it to an extent that a system that he initiated consumed him and he relinquished power. So now the onus is on Buhari now to ensure that the system gets more transparent. He should produce a better Jega. He should produce a system that is now more acceptable, that has more integrity, such that by 2019, you can even vote from your house and you can predict the outcome of that election even before the result is concluded. That is possible when there's a will to do so on the part of the Buhari administration.
All right, so you think tackling this issue, how exactly do you feel we should tackle it? Because we see people handing over, talking about Africa now, we see presidents handing over power to their sons like it's a family business.
Well, I think that first of all is to allow the institutions to work. Just like I just continue to use Professor Jega as an example. When you have individuals who have the willpower and they are not interested in the perks of office, and they're not interested in the monetary gains of what they are getting from office, and they can stand up to any dictator, then the institutions will be strengthened. The National Assembly should be strengthened. The INEC should be strengthened. The court should be strengthened. So that when there is a single tiny person rising up to become like a teen god over us, we can look him in the eye and say, no, no more. And that's what happened here when Obasanjo tried to extend his tenure after ruling Nigeria as a military. He ruled again as 8 years, and he wanted to extend it. And people stood up to him and said, no more. And that's what should happen in all other African countries.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebun Adegboruwa. He's a legal practitioner, and he's been speaking to us on the advice President Barack Obama has given to African leaders on sitting tight in office. Thank you very much.